They say your reputation is your most valuable currency. In the world of high-stakes influence, your face is your fortune, your body a temple to be curated, worshipped, and flaunted. We were the architects of desire, the trendsetters. We built empires on the illusion of perfection. I was one of them. My name is Anya Petrova, and I am the sole survivor of the Ethelgerd retreat incident. The police report calls it a mass suicide fueled by a shared psychosis. The tabloids call it a cautionary tale of fame. They're all wrong. It was a judgment. This is the legend of the Bone Stitcher and the terrible price it extracts for those who use their beauty as a weapon. The Ethelgerd retreat was an exclusive, hyper-luxurious sanctuary carved into a remote mountain range. For 1 week a year, it played host to a dozen of the world's most beautiful, most vain, and most ruthless influencers, models, and entrepreneurs. I was among them. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and quiet desperation. We were all there to be seen, to network, to subtly undermine each other while maintaining the flawless facade of camaraderie. The king of this shallow jungle was a man named Julian Vance, a fitness mogul whose empire was built on selling unattainable perfection and whose personal cruelty was an open secret. The queen was Isabella Rossi, a former model turned wellness guru who had systematically destroyed the careers of any girl she saw as a threat. The first 2 days were a predictable parade of photo shoots, passive-aggressive compliments, and carefully measured meals. The tension was a live wire. Julian had just publicly shamed a younger influencer, Sasha, for having the audacity to gain 5 pounds since their last meeting. Isabella had accidentally leaked a private, unflattering photo of a rival. We all participated in the subtle tearing down. It was the culture. It was the game. On the 3rd night, the power went out. Not just the electricity, but the generators, the satellite phones, everything. We were utterly isolated. In the profound silence of the mountain darkness, we first heard the sound. A soft, rhythmic click-clack, click-clack, like 2 smooth stones being tapped together. It came from the walls, from the ceiling. It was the sound of bone on bone. Julian, ever the arrogant fool, laughed it off. Probably just the pipes cooling down, but the sound grew closer, more deliberate. Then we saw him. He emerged from the shadows of the grand hall, not like a man walking, but like a puppet being presented. He was impossibly tall and thin, a cadaverous figure draped in tattered, funereal black rags that seemed to drink the light from our emergency candles. But it was his hands that stole the breath from my lungs. Where his fingers should have been, there were long, polished, yellow-white needles of bone, sharpened to fine points. They moved with a tailor's grace, weaving invisible threads in the air. And his eyes were not eyes. They were 2 black mother-of-pearl buttons, sewn crudely into his sunken sockets. He was the Bone Stitcher, and he had come to collect his due. He didn't speak. He simply pointed one bony needle finger at Julian. Julian froze, a smirk still etched on his perfectly sculpted face. The Stitcher glided towards him. Julian tried to run, but his body was no longer his own. The Stitcher's needles moved in a blur. He didn't cut Julian, he unstitched him. With a series of soft, popping sounds, Julian's skeleton seemed to come apart at the joints. His body collapsed into a heap of flesh, but his bones were now separate, held in the Stitcher's grasp like a macabre puppet. With terrifying artistry, the Stitcher began to reassemble him, but not as he was. He contorted Julian's skeleton into a grotesque, permanent curtsy, his spine arched backwards at an impossible angle, his jawbone wired into a silent, agonized scream. It was a pose of ultimate submission. Julian was still alive, his eyes wide with incomprehensible terror, trapped inside a living sculpture of his own arrogance. Panic erupted. Isabella screamed and tried to flee, but the Stitcher was upon her in an instant. He assessed her, his button eyes seeming to take in every facet of her celebrated beauty. Then he went to work. He unstitched her cheekbones, repositioning them into a lopsided, monstrous asymmetry. He rearranged her ribs into a twisted cage, a physical manifestation of the prison she had built for others with her beauty standards. She was left conscious, a living mockery of the perfection she had worshipped. One by one, he judged us. He came for Sasha, the girl Julian had shamed. The stitcher didn't contort her. He stitched her bones together so tightly she was left in a fetal ball, forever small, forever hidden, just as their cruelty had made her feel. He came for Marco, a photographer who had made his career by exploiting young models. The stitcher unstitched his hands and restitched them permanently over his own eyes, forcing him to forever witness only the darkness he had created in others. I hid, crammed into a dumbwaiter, listening to the symphony of soft pops and the faint, wet sounds of my friends and rivals being remade. I was not a good person. I had traded on my looks. I had been complicit in the cruelty. But my sin was one of silence, of opportunism, not of active malice. Perhaps that is what saved me. Or perhaps he simply hadn't finished his collection. After what felt like an eternity, the clicking stopped. I dared to peek out. The grand hall was a gallery of horrors. My companions, my rivals, were all there. Living statues of agony and poetic justice, their bones stitched into permanent, silent screams of their deepest flaws. The bone stitcher stood in the center, surveying his work. His button eyes swept the room, and then I swear, they paused on my hiding place. He raised one needle finger, not in a threat, but in a gesture of acknowledgement, as if to say, I have shown you the true structure of your souls. Remember it. Then he turned and melted back into the shadows from which he came. The power returned an hour later. The rescue team found me, catatonic, surrounded by the living, breathing art installation of my former life. They are all in a specialized hospital now, kept alive by machines, their minds perfectly aware inside their bone prisons. The doctors have no explanation. I know the explanation. Vanity is not a victimless sin. It is a currency, and when you spend it to break others, a collector will eventually come to balance the books. The bone stitcher is that collector. He doesn't want your life. He wants your aesthetic. He wants to make your outside reflect the rot you cultivated within. So look in the mirror. Ask yourself what your bones are truly worth. If you've built your kingdom on the backs of others' insecurities, beware the click-clack in the dark. He is the final critic, and his review is permanent. I post this as my confession and my warning. Share it. Let my story be a lesson. In the end, we are all just skeletons waiting to be judged.